Welcome back to the Sunday Footy Show. As we said from the outset, they are calling it, as in these guys, one of the games, if not the game of the season so far, and Collingwood doing everything to suggest they really do have a firm grip with one hand on that Premiership Cup.
There's no doubt about that, TJ. They're probably 10 to 15% better than the next best, albeit it has shown, and Melbourne and Adelaide and now Port Adelaide have shown you can get them if you bring that fierce, ferocity around the footy. I thought Port Adelaide's forwards competed really well, kept Collingwood to 11 intercept marks, which has been their strength. I know it was wet conditions, but Port Adelaide took 15. Just love the season of Sam Powell-Pepper and what he is bringing. And I thought Port Adelaide's attitude to actually get after them, they performed really strongly. So there's a lot that they could take out of this game to think, okay, we're not actually that far. And if things go our way towards the back end, and if we can finish top two and we meet them on the last day, on grand final day of the MCG, you give yourself a chance. But in the end, I thought the Collingwood fans travelled pretty well. They made a lot of noise. There's Dacos kicking one from a free kick brownie, but all in all, it was the story of Collingwood doing it.
Fair to say this game was played at another level compared to any other game this season.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's the best game I've seen this year in terms of not the best skill, and there was errors and the conditions were a bit treacherous and players fell over and they fumbled and they missed handballs, but that was as a result of the pressure, and both teams stood up in that space.
Taylor Adams played his 200th game, and what a game it was for Taylor Adams. He's been asked to play half forward this season, kicked the goal there, obviously really understanding where the game was at, Jamie Elliott to give him that, but went into this middle, played more midfield time last night, and in the conditions was brilliant. 9 clearances, and I thought when he went in there, it was just the tide turned for Collingwood. He got so many clearances through that midfield, playing a different role, as I said, this year. And I thought his press conference or his answers to the media questions after the game were outstanding as well. He was very humble about the 200th. The interview, the press conference. I know you made fun of that, TJ, but I thought it was fantastic the way he spoke
He's
after
just
the game.
Ultimate team player, isn't he, Brownie?
Yeah.
And the way he's changed his role and been prepared to.
But he was actually quite emotional in that interview, and that's when I said earlier whether there's been a club that love each other as much as what Collingwood do at the moment, and it came through in that interview.
And they have to be because Tom Mitchell got subbed out again. So
I wanted to ask you about that.
If you can't evolve,
is his position vulnerable now?
Yeah, I think last week, he was subbed in. With Pendlebury going out, and so to be subbed, and I thought, okay, it's just managing minutes.
Yeah.
But they've subbed him out again, so they've given him a half 2 weeks in a row, which is not a good sign. I would have thought for Tom.
Were you surprised that Oleg Markov started as a sub anyway? He's been brilliant lately.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, you'd say, OK, Tom Mitchell, Brownlow medalist career, but Markov probably provides that run and speed more. So they've got enough. They've got Pendlebury, they've got Taylor Adams, they've got Jordan De Goey.
Yeah.
So Tom Mitchell maybe is now that 4th or 5th player that they may not need.
And if you don't perform well for 1 week and then 2 weeks, and I look at Mason Cox, for example, like, is his position vulnerable? Now, he's structurally important because he can ruck and back up, but he hardly touched it and hasn't
Just on
touched
that,
it.
Kane, they left him on the bench for almost 15 to 20 minutes, which I've not seen a player who's, unless it's a concussion moment, but they left him out for a long period of the game.
So it's good problems. Ash Johnson didn't play, Frampton didn't play. So to your point, TJ, they've got depth. I can't believe players continually, I'm banging on about this, but I thought players slipping over for Port Adelaide cost them significantly last night, and the fact that they don't own a pair of screw-in boots does my head in. It rained all day, and these players, Boak, I guarantee he doesn't have screw-ins on, falls over. Horn Francis is the same, and 1%ers in the context of a game like that can cost you, and I thought it cost Port Adelaide last night.
Rosie was extraordinary again last night. Zach Butters had probably dropped off a little bit on what he had shown in the first, say, 12, 13 weeks of the season. And I say that contextually, but he was, again, outstanding last night himself, wasn't he? Both of these players.
Yeah, they were. Just on Port Adelaide, I'm probably thinking last night, if you couldn't beat Collingwood in those wet conditions on your home ground, to their credit, they made Collingwood make mistakes that I haven't seen. I worry for Port, saying if you couldn't beat them last night there, how they would go on grand final day at the MCG, better conditions.
So who would
They
be
lost
there?
by a kick, Lordo.
Yeah,
I wasn't
right.
taking too much away from them. It could have gone either way. And I know it didn't.
Yeah, but
and
what I'm saying is the conditions suited, in my opinion, Port Adelaide, with the big bodies, wet conditions on their home turf. I would fear for Port Adelaide against Collingwood.
I thought Lordo explained it pretty well the first time.
But who would you feel confident?
I disagree.
Which
I think it enhanced their credentials.
Nathan, you're really dirty about having to give up the hosting.
No,
right?
he explained it the first time. He explained it perfectly.
Yeah, I know.
I disagree with it, though. I think it enhanced their credentials.
Yeah, but
That's my view on it.
Is there a team that you'd be confident against Collingwood right now?
Well, probably,
who's going to beat them?
I'm not a big fan of Melbourne, but I'd give Melbourne more so on the MCG than Port Adelaide.
What if Geelong was to sneak into the 4?
They play each other in 2 weeks, so we'll find out.
All right, then.
All right.
OK, you got some votes?
The votes, yeah. Let's look at... I found it actually difficult to work out who was the most and best influential players on the ground. It was pretty even from the Pies. Thought Murphy's first half was excellent. Combated Jeremy Finlayson. Jamie Elliott kicked 3, but it felt like more than that. He had a high number of score involvements, 8. Rosie was excellent, and Power Pepper's season I just love.
All right, terrific stuff. We are getting to the pointy end of the season, and we have these discussions, and it'll play out in the fullness of time as to whether Port Adelaide is the team to actually challenge Collingwood and whether they can take some sort of belief out of that game last night or not. Welcome back. You're watching the Sunday Footy Show. Wherever you might be watching it, we hope you're enjoying it half as much as what we are. Now, Geelong headed north to try and strengthen their September credentials. Not that they need to, of course, on the back of last year. But the Brisbane Lions had a bit to say about that.
I love to see a team respond when it was devastation last week, the way they lost that game to Melbourne, and the Brisbane Lions responded in the best way. Danaher's in fantastic form. Dunkley, he's so important for them. McCluggage is in good form, and Neil got his 25. And for the Cats, they just didn't have enough contributors, and Kane has touched on the belting that they got through that midfield area, Kane, and they started really well, the Lions.
They did, and the other thing you've got to give the Lions credit for is their improvement in their defensive action and the way they're defending. They strangled Geelong to the point where Geelong almost panicked, Brownie. They were trying to pick off things through the middle of the ground just to get something going, because Brisbane's zone and the way that they were able to defend the ground and Geelong's ball movement was that good that the Cats had to panic. And, I mean, they kicked 1 goal at half-time, the Cats.
They didn't have this last year, the Lions. They didn't have the defensive pressure. They tried to put a zone in place last year, but it was quite easy to pick through. But this year just seems a little bit different, the way they're going about it. I like Joe Danaher, who's got the licence now to go up and play midfield and then drift back down, rather than having somebody standing him the whole game. He gets all the way up, then comes back. He's getting high numbers, high possessions at the moment. Jeremy Cameron kicked 3 goals in the end of the game. And what about this guy? He's been in and out. He's had his injury concerns, but I thought he was one of the best players on the ground. Calamarchi kicked a big goal late when they were coming, and he was very good. But it was a clearance domination by the Brisbane Lions over Geelong, plus 27. I know the Cats came back late. Lachie Neale didn't have his biggest numbers in terms of possessions, only had 25, but 10 of those were clearances out of the middle. And him, Dunkley, through that middle, they just dominated the Cats to the point where they put Tom Stewart, who had taken 6 intercept marks and was probably their best player behind the football, into the middle of the ground to try and get some sort of clearance work done. But Lachie Neale was good again.
What a big loss Ashcroft's going to be, because then it probably comes back to Jared Lyons again. Yeah. So they're having that's next in line. So he's going to be a huge loss for the rest of the season.
No doubt. So whether Cam Rayner spends some more time on ball, Bailey didn't play yesterday. So what they do have and what Collingwood have is depth. That's probably the difference between Collingwood and Brisbane versus Port Adelaide. But you mentioned Tom Stewart, Brownie. Chris Scott sends subtle messages, and I'm not sure this was even that subtle.
Not subtle.
To his midfield. He's one of the biggest FUs to his midfield that I've seen. TJ, I know you just... I didn't say the word, I said F.
You might as well, if you're only 2 letters off.
I said F. That's okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to get in trouble for that. But he went on ball after half time and went inside because his midfield could not get that done, and that's a strong message from Chris Scott to his midfield.
So I know I've had the slows on Geelong just because of where they sit, and when you're at round 18, 19 and you're in that position, do you have any trust in them, Kane? What midfielders aren't in the form you'd like them to be?
Well, so I was disappointed in Holmes yesterday because we had him on the show last week and he'd come off 33, but I thought just physically he wasn't able to compete with the contested ground ball stuff. They killed them from ground balls. Dangerfield they're reliant on, but he plays in bursts now. He doesn't consistently do it. Isaac Smith tried across the wing but wasn't able to get it done as well. So you're relying on Bruin and Bowes, who played a bit across half-back, but they just don't have the depth through the midfield.
Chris Fagan's got a lot of favourites. A new one to the list this year is Josh Dunkley, who was really, really good again. Had missed with a soft tissue in recent weeks, but the importance he's got and his ability to just get to the contests and be tough and set up plays, it's becoming a pretty important storyline for the Lions this year.
But he can play on players as well too, Damo. Did the job on Patrick Cripps, so he goes to their best midfielder who's in form and can blanket them.
It's been a key pickup. It's helped change the way they set up in the middle, and I think it's allowing them to dream pretty loftily.
Let's have a look at the votes. And I thought that man you spoke about, Josh Dunkley, was just about the best man on the ground. Tom Stewart was fantastic. When you've got a smashing in the middle, Oscar McInerney was fantastic as well, and Archie.
More than 57,000 fans ventured to the MCG yesterday for the clash between Hawthorn and Richmond. And I've got to say, each and every one of those fans would have got their money's worth.
It was a great game of football, and Tim Taranto kicked 3 goals, Baker 2. Baker's fantastic. Dustin Martin finding some really good form again. Mitch Lewis, you can build a side around him. Wingard had his best game in a while. His first half was brilliant, and Jai Newcombe had 30. Sicily, I think, is just about the most important backman in the competition at the moment. When he is up and firing, and I thought he did a great job on Jack Riewoldt yesterday. That's Mitch Lewis jumping over the top. But Hawthorn, I'm bullish about Hawthorn next year. I think they've got a list at the moment and a coach who's willing to take risks, a coach who's a forward thinker. I like the way Sam Mitchell goes about it. You've got some really good players through that midfield, and they are building.
What do they need?
What do they need? I reckon they need another defender to help out James Sicily.
And they are also after a second key forward because Kaczynski hasn't worked for them. So I think that's the other area they're going after.
They lost those 3 games in a row from rounds 15 to 17, and Sam Mitchell spoke about the lack of there was any vibe or zest about the group, and they needed some enthusiasm, and their body language was down. So I thought they were in trouble of the season slipping away, but they've hung in there and they've had a couple of close wins. But there's Baker. I just think he's so important to what Richmond do. I mentioned his leadership, and yesterday he's the one that stands up often when they need to, and credit to them. They're big players with big reputations in Taranto and Baker and Martin and Riewoldt all had big moments in that last quarter.
You mentioned those 3 matches that the Hawks lost. It was no coincidence that their captain, James Sicily, was not part of that sequence of events, given the tribunal suspension he got for the tackle on Hugh McCluggage. But he was awesome again yesterday. He nearly single-handedly set the win up, and the way he was able to read the ball coming in on Jack Riewoldt and other moments at key points of the game, it wasn't his fault that they weren't able to get the job done.
10 intercept marks. Nobody's ever taken more. I mean, there's about 8 players on that 10 mark at the moment, but he was brilliant. And as you said, Damon, when he's out, the game against Port Adelaide's a perfect example. They got routed through the middle and through their forward half of the ground, but when he's playing, they're a much better side.
And those wins they had against St Kilda initially and then the Brisbane Lions, that game yesterday was up with that,
Yeah, we saw North tag him last week. Is nearly what you have to do to stop him, stop his importance. Tim Taranto will... I know we're not going to go back to it, but Kane's right in terms of his field stuff. But if you can start kicking 3 goals, which he's kicked a 4 and he's kicked another bag in another game of football, that's just worth its weight in gold. And look at the scoreline here, 27 points. This was huge.
What was with his kick, Otto?
It's a beautiful set shot.
It flushed, didn't it?
Yeah, he did, and he did it a couple of times where he just flushed them from out, surprised himself a bit. But good on him. He's had a good solid year.
Let's have a look at the votes in this game as well. And I thought James Sicily was outstanding. Best man on the ground, Dustin Martin, Liam Baker, who I agree, Kane, the next captain of the Richmond Football Club, and Tim Taranto. Apologies to Noah Bolter, 7 intercept marks. I thought he was worthy of a vote as well, but I didn't get him in.
Welcome back to the Sunday Footy Show. Only moments away from this week's instalment of Mediocre. Are you happy with it?
Yes.
Do you think it might very good. Rattle a few?
I don't think. No, it's not a hard-hitting one this week.
Career best form it's been in, so I hope
mediocre.
I think it has.
That'll be good. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
You're supposed to pump it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good one.
It's been a great thing for this show.
You're not going soft, though, this okay? You're not getting soft, are you?
When we come up with the receipts at the start of the year, we had to come up with something else. Where is the receipts gone?
It's coming.
Are there some people now that you have to back off? Like,
no.
Are they?
No.
Because you've given Sam McClure a good going over, haven't you?
Yeah.
You can probably back off Sam.
I'll back off Sam.
Back off Sam.
You're a good fella, Sam.
Yeah, good. You scared of him too?
No.
Oh. All right, now Carlton. We should all be scared of Carlton at the moment because they are really looking ominous, as they did against the West Coast Eagles. But, as we discussed earlier, without taking anything away from Carlton, it is a little lopsided.
We should be a little bit scared of them because what a way they've turned their season around. They've won their last 5 by 50-plus points. Now, yesterday this was what was expected was going to happen. The only concern for them is the injuries, which we'll touch on, and Damo already has. But it was all about this man, and when he's playing like this, he's one of the most watchable players in the league. So Curnow kicked 10, he had 7 at half-time, and essentially the game was over. About 5 minutes into this game, they had 20 entries to 4 in the first quarter. The Blues, that's how easy it is when you're kicking goals like that. Look at the score, but they had 14 shots in the first quarter from those 20 entries, and it was a nice percentage booster for them. Not that it really matters, because of course Carlton have got the draw, but They are inside the 8. We'll wait and see whether they end the round there, Brownie. But they're feeling a lot better about themselves, the Blues, from when...
can be important because the clubs around them, Geelong and Richmond, have both had the draw as well. So... Cripps and Chera not being out there yesterday has proved the masterstroke. They come back against Collingwood next week nice and fresh.
Hopefully they do. Not sure about Chera with a hammy. You get a bit nervous with that. You suspect Cripps will play, but you've already mentioned Motlop and Silvani, and Walsh has got the hammy.
Yeah, it's just hard to work out what happened with Silvani, whether it was just a precautionary once he felt the knock on the knee, because he did come off relatively early to be subbed out.
It is an amazing turnaround, isn't it? I mean, like, what was it, 5 weeks ago, Carlton fans were absolutely going berserk. They wanted Voss gone. And
they did.
And now, you're not hearing from those fans now.
No, you're not. And I think how composed Michael Voss was in that situation. Yeah. We spoke to him on Friday on the radio, and he just said...
And Luke Sayers.
Yeah, and the club and the leadership in general. I think it's a good point. And then also the players and the leaders from the footy club who responded. And Cripps is one of those, and Wiedering also, but their better players turn their form around to the point where the season is alive, and I think it's great for the season. George Hewitt was terrific yesterday. We'll get to him because without Chera and without Cripps, he got some opportunity, and it hasn't been the year that he would have hoped for through a variety of reasons, but did what he needed to do yesterday. He had 30, had 10 clearances, 10 score involvements. I mean, they all played well, but I thought it was a standout performance for George.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard to leave him out off the back of this.
The challenge for Carlton, though, is because they lost their 6, they still have to win 4 of their last 5 to make the finals, and they got Collingwood on Friday night. So lose that, and suddenly they're back under the pump again, having to win their last 4 to make the finals. And people would say, what a waste in a sense, because we play so well in the back half of the year, but what went on in the middle part of the year. So it's still, they're in the 8 now, but they've got a lot of work to do.
And their destiny is in their own hands.
It is,
isn't it?
That's a good
So
thing.
we're going to find out, who the real Carlton is. But the fact that they managed to survive all that and all the garbage associated with it in terms of the narrative, I reckon good on them.
Good on them. Let's take a look at the votes yesterday. TJ, obviously it was dominated by Carlton, and you kick 10, you get 10. That's what happens. And George Hewitt, we mentioned, Doherty was terrific. His numbers were huge, and De Koning in the ruck, excellent with his ability to win clearance and contested footy yesterday. He had 9 clearances and 8 score involvements.
But see, that almost contradicts your argument about it compromising things, West Coast, because based on that, you wouldn't have given Charlie Curnow 10.
Well, but you have to give the votes to someone. Don't you? Like,
well, it is for about an $85,000 car.
You couldn't have done much more than kick 10.
100,000.
If you get 10, I'm happy to give 10 votes, don't you think?
Yep.
Thanks, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this. We spoke about the disappointment that Freo is, but the Sydney Swans just keep on keeping on.
They do keep on keeping on. It's Nath eats his pie, I'll save you, Nath. Shorts kick 4, you were gone then. I didn't jump in.
He's supposed to be doing the game, and he's eating a five.
It was just an embarrassing first quarter from the Dockers at home, Nath. That's about the 3rd time they've frozen at home in front of their own crowd.
They're nowhere near the side they were last year, we know that, but defensively last year they were so good, and you could not get through the web that they put through the midfield, but it is just easy to play against them at the moment. Longmuir was not getting the best out of them. Papley was good again, Lance Franklin was good, but where has last year gone? I mean, most people thought that this was a top 4 side coming into this year. You play one good season, you go away, you elevate. They won a final last year, but they are so far off it. I mean, it's embarrassing at the moment.
But then they teased us a few weeks ago.
They won 4 in a row.
Yeah, fair while back now.
But Brayshaw and Sarong can only do so much in the midfield. They've been outstanding all year, but it's the edges at the moment.
It is, and one man who's been pretty good for a long, long time is Luke Parker, and once again his numbers were just extraordinary when you look at what he did. Now, you just can never question his effort and his ability to win the contest, which is where Sydney have been disappointing at stages. When they've lost, they've been beaten badly around the ball. So for Luke Parker to step up yesterday once again, he had 15 contested possessions, 8 clearances, and he won his footy in good positions. That's what he does. I mean, that's one of the tackles of the year, but 9 score involvements as well. So, been doing it for a long while. He's been a star of the game.
Buddy loves playing the Dockers. Buddy Franklin. He's always had a good record at Optus Stadium and against the Dockers, and he was good. He kicked his 3, not like the 6s and 7s he used to kick, but he moved well.
He was lively, wasn't he?
Yeah, he
good
was
solid
lively,
game, wasn't it?
and it was important. He straightened them right up. At times below his knees, he's looked really poor in recent weeks, but he was much better.
Just wonder what it says about Pearce, just before you jump in, TJ. Like, he's the captain of the club. To be beaten this badly by a 36-year-old, it was an odd choice as captain because he struggled to influence back there. I think they'll make a change at the end of the year.
Luke Parker best on ground, as you can see there. Caleb Strong was good as well.
Anyway, don't worry about
TJ,
that.
sorry about what
No, I was just going to say, do you think, Buddy, is there a mindset that, like, it was his farewell match in his home state, essentially? Is there a bit of a mindset there that you sort of want to sort of perform well?
Farewell tour.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, it'd be great if he can finish really well. It doesn't really matter because he's been, I don't know, so good. But, nice to wear, because there's been some weeks you go, OK, does he have a farewell game? But it's nice to see him.
But I'm saying that was his last match in WA, his home state.
Not in his nature, the way we've seen him to want that focus on him, TJ, as he goes through the states on this.
When do you think he'll announce it? The last round? Do you think, knowing Buddy?
Look, the club, I believe, in the backs of its mind, wants it to happen that way. But he may just say, look, I'll play the game and then wave goodbye.
Yeah.
And that's probably why he's wired.
Well, that's probably the way to go, isn't it? I mean, he's never been one to
Never been one
limelight.
He got caught up in it, and I think it added to it when he kicked the 1,000th goal last year. Like when Michael Wilson and other photographers took the moments, he embraced that. But outside of that, he's always been about team, really. So, yeah.
All right, Marvel Stadium on Friday night. This was the clash between Essendon and the Western Bulldogs.
Oh, it was so important for both clubs, TJ, and now like the loser was going to just slide down, and the Bombers find themselves in around 12th now, and then obviously the Western Bulldogs get themselves back in the fight for that home final at 5th or 6th. So the first quarter, I thought Essendon were the better side. They were challenging the Western Bulldogs. They were the better midfield. They were quick and dynamic as we know them. But after that, Liberatore went to work in the midfield. Bontempelli was awesome. Treloar lifted. And then suddenly they played front half territory footy. Waitman got to work. Ugle-Hagan. You see a crumb goal like that. And the Bombers just had no answer through the midfield after quarter time. They're absolutely smashed. And a lot of the talk afterwards, suddenly they've looked tired the last couple of weeks, the Bombers.
Do we know the real Bulldogs?
No.
Oh, the real Bulldogs to me is a 7th or 8th, where they're sort of sitting on the ladder because they can't really beat anyone of note, which will be their challenge in the run home. But what I don't think has been highlighted enough is this. I hated this aspect of Essendon, and I've liked their season, but this is their 7 defenders and the marks that they've taken. So their top 4 disposal winners were defenders on Friday night, and you don't want that to happen, but that is just a team that goes lateral and sideways and doesn't challenge the opposition, and everyone's watching for that now. Geelong exposed it last week, so that's not going to take you far, and they've got the draw to play finals, but that will cost them unless they get back to being an aggressive side through the corridor.
Jake Stringer's got to insert himself on games more as well. Hardly sighted for a long period of the season.
Liberatore dominated. Bont, Daniel and Ridley was Essendon's best player.
And so that leaves the leaderboard like this. Now, Nick Dacos has been up the top and he's still 13 votes clear. Bont would have voted there, as you know, Christian Petrarca, Butters, Bontempelli, Dawson and Zach Merritt, and they're all playing for this. This is one of the great prizes. This is the biggest prize in football. The Lou Richards Medal winner will drive off in a Lexus RX 350H Luxury. Thanks to Lexus of Blackburn, a leader, not a follow-up, dynamic, unique, defying convention, just like the player that gets to drive at home. Thanks to Lexus of Blackburn, the all-new Lexus RX 350H Luxury is like nothing else. Your test drive is waiting at Lexus of Blackburn today. The biggest prize in football, and currently Nick Dacos has one foot in there.